This one is from Akira TV. So the MMORPG genre is dead to me. I can probably see where this is going, and it's upsetting because I think it's dead to a lot of people. And every time a new MMO comes out, you get excited, and it never lives up to that excitement, and it's just a bummer, man. Yeah. So, Kira usually has some pretty good takes. I don't think his takes on Star Citizen have been that great, but I am interested in what he has to say when it comes to MMOs, that's for sure. So, let's see.
I've found myself hopping from game to game trying to find what it was that made me a lifelong MMORPG addict. It's probably not the healthiest mindset, but I'm still chasing that fix.
Yeah,
I started playing back in 1997, playing Ultima Online, and I tried pretty
That's Corpor is it's not Explosion. It's the one you do before Explosion. I can't remember, but I'm obsessed with this. Yeah, still this game, and this time of this game was the
pretty
best.
much everything from then until now. Sometimes even finding a home for thousands of hours, but more likely a fleeting experience. The MMORPG genre has been headed down a dark path now for over a decade.
This looks
and you know
sick.
what else is dark? Today's sponsor, Dark Nemesis Infinite Quest. Do you have what it takes to be a peacekeeper of the multiverse? Find out today with the
Look at how hard it is for him to do this ad, by the way.
link in the video description, and join the battle against threatening bosses from different worlds. Take on the hordes of enemies as one of 4 classes: warrior,
You can
assassin,
totally
mage, or
tell.
gunslinger, each with unique skills and aesthetics. If you're out on the move and need a game to jump into within minutes, no problem. You can play this from anywhere, like here, or even outside your house. I, of course, can't get footage of me doing that because I'm not allowed to leave. I have to stay here and make YouTube content, and my yard time is limited to a few minutes each day. But
That's
you
actually funny.
could do it on your commute, at work, on your boss's time, when your waifu drags you to the pillow store, literally anywhere. There is exciting PvP, including a battle royale mode, as well as 5v5 and 10 versus 10 if that's more your speed, and of course a ton of PvE content. So join the battle for free using a link in the video description, use the gift code to get some goodies in game, and check out their event where you can win prizes for making your own video. Do all that, and maybe I'll be allowed outside today.
think I
Thank
got
you
an
very much
offer
to
to
Dark
do-
Nemesis for sponsoring this video.
To do
and
this,
back
but
to
I was on the
content.
cruise.
I played a recently released MMO that really hooked me for a couple of weeks, Lost Ark. Sadly, that same MMO made me realize that what I'm looking for in this genre is gone. It's dead and it's buried, replaced with something almost unrecognizable.
It's true.
This experience sent me on a real deep introspection regarding the genre's current state, and more importantly, my place within it. I had some long conversations with my friends and my brother, who are also long-term MMO fans. They've been there with me for
it'll
a
never
lot of
come
these
back,
years,
dude.
and most of what was said was agreed upon wholeheartedly by each one of us. The genre just isn't for us anymore,
It's
and
true.
it's unlikely to ever be again. Now, I just
Here's
want to
the thing.
outline that this is not me.
Here's the thing. It is for us. That's the problem. Is it's now being made for us when we were kids in 1997, and now I wear polos and look like I'm going to the golf course or a fucking dad because I have a job and I have money now. They're literally being made for us because we have disposable income instead of being made for us because we had disposable time. That's the difference.
Giving up on the genre. I'm not the most jaded human being in the world, I don't think, or that I'm saying you're wrong if you like current MMOs or a current MMO, or if you find fun in the genre, because I'm glad that you do.
Well, I don't
wish
have
I
much
did as
disposable
well.
income, but I think you
The
know what I
genre is
mean.
inarguably more popular than it's ever been, and it has more popular games across the board than it did when I would have considered it the genre for me. That means more people having fun, and clearly that's why we are where we are today,
What is
and
that
that's where we
doing?
should be, because that's what games are for people to enjoy them and to have fun. I do, however, think that the original spirit, the original vision of what the MMO
Every time
acronym
I
used
see
to
it.
mean is just not the same.
Oh
The
my
way
God,
I
I
would
used to mine
describe
there
it
so
is that
much.
there's some great games in the MMORPG genre. They're just not great MMORPGs. And
Yeah.
part of that might come from me. Part of it might come from my nostalgia, my
It is your nostalgia. Like, you got to remember, this game was grindy to like a fault in a way, but that grind led to an achievement that you felt proud of at the end. I don't know if people have the energy or the patience for this kind of stuff anymore.
Change of lifestyle, my change of perspective over.
Like, I could go back to Ultima Online. The free shards are very realistic to what it was back then, and it was boring and brutal, and, like, I don't know. I can't do it anymore.
Over the years, but I do think there are examples you can give that do hold water when discussing how the games are just designed differently, and thus fundamentally going to change the experience you have and how they feel to play. Now, as for why Lost Ark sent me on this quest, I was truly enjoying the game. I was playing 8 to 12 hours a day, and it's sincerely been a while since I've had that in an MMO. I was even neglecting work to play. However, each day, I just found something else that bothered me about the experience. Each day, something I was doing was grating at me and wearing me down until I just stopped logging on. It wasn't like there was a specific moment
Ultima
where I was
Online
like,
did that too, though.
yeah, this sucks, I don't want to play anymore. I didn't make a conscious decision to stop. It was just a progressive distaste for how the game made me feel. The way I would probably describe that is the slow decline of the willpower I had to try and ignore the issues that I was noticing just so I could enjoy the few things that were hooking me into the game. And as soon as I saw behind the veil of what was hooking me, that was it. I just couldn't stop noticing it anymore. Talking specifics for Lost Ark, the game has a lot of good points. In fact, I'd go as far to say as it's one of the most feature-complete MMOs we've seen released in recent years, and in terms of how much content there is, it's pretty unparalleled in the market. I can definitely see why this game has appealed to such a wide audience of people, including myself, because there's just so much stuff to do. Specifically as well, the horizontal content, the combat's really fun, and of course the game's flashy. It just feels good in that brainless kind of way that ARPGs make you feel, as well as there being content that makes you think as well, so you can really step into the lane of what you want to do as you want to do it. However, some of the core systems just remind me of how much more fun I used to have when the treadmill
in like every Asmongold video is just him launching money into space on this menu.
Wasn't so blatant. For example, Lost Ark's core gearing system is one of the most unfun systems I've ever interacted with, and it makes the positive of progression-based tiers that are prevalent throughout the game's lifespan just feel worse than they really should. And now, what do I mean by progression-based tiers? It's basically when a player must go through tier 1 to get to tier 2, and then through tier 2 to get to tier 3, and so on. Basically, this stops them cannibalizing their own content. For an example of cannibalizing content, I would give you skip mechanics like in retail World of Warcraft, where
he's saying that the tier system is good, right? That's what I like. That's what I want to see in Star Citizen, but it'll never happen. And oh man, like I just know that won't be, like, that's not what is meant to be in Star Citizen at all. But this is what I love. That's what I love about games like that. I'm obsessed with them.
Essentially, they release a new patch and it invalidates what was in the previous patches because it allows you to catch up without doing that content. It essentially gives you less of a game to play, and they just want everyone on the same footing. Now, using that same comparison but of older WoW, and why Lost Ark feels worse in the way that it does this, despite it being kind of similar with you going through the tiers instead of skipping them. In old WoW, you'd work for something for quite a while, and then when you got it, when you achieved it, it would feel valuable and you would feel fulfilled. And then moving to the next tier didn't instantly devalue all the things you'd done previously because you still had that stuff, and it was still useful for quite a while until you got new stuff. Essentially, it was a much more long form of progression where you were getting things slowly, so when you did get something, it really felt meaningful. In Lost Ark, however, everything's 0 to 100. You go from no gear when you hit level 50 to being in the first tier of gear and upgrading all your stuff really quickly, and then that gear is easily enhanced, and then it gets harder and harder while also getting better quality, and you're trying to get the right stats for your class, until you hit an artificial barrier of RNG, which you can then surpass with grinding for more hours daily on alts or spending real life money until you overcome said barrier. Now, this obviously isn't bad for everybody. Some people like incremental progression, but for me, it felt more frustrating than rewarding, and I actually think it felt more like a compulsion rather than an achievement. I wasn't doing it because I was enjoying it, I was doing it because I just wanted to get the next level. Now, of course, once you overcome that barrier, once you hit the next tier, you literally throw that gear away. Gear that you grinded for each day for dozens of hours, likely even getting the right stats for your class, and you do so for just instantly.
Why do I want that system in Star Citizen? Because I love it. I think taking like a low tier item and it turning into something else more valuable, and then that item turning into something else even more valuable, that low tier item, the thing you did at the very beginning of your career in a video game, always retains its value then. That's why. So anything in the game has value. That's why. It has value straight from the early game all the way to the end game. Because somewhere during that progression, whatever you made or used in end game, utilize that thing at the very beginning. It's what I've always loved.
Received higher eye level pieces, and then you restart the cycle all over again. And by the time you get to the end and get the stats that you wanted, you then, throw that gear away and move into the next tier. On top of this, because you know the source for the gear and what the gear looks like and what the gear is, and it's so easy to come by, you're just chasing rarity and then RNG differences in stats and quality. It just didn't ever feel like a fulfilling experience to receive gear, especially knowing that as soon as I moved to the next tier, I'd just be replacing it with a higher eye level anyways, so it was kind of pointless. Of course, this changes once you hit tier 3 because that's the max right now, but you've already at that point spent hundreds of hours in the game. So to bring it back to the overall MMO discussion, back in my day, back in the early days of the genre with games like EverQuest and World of Warcraft, when you received gear upgrades, they were so few and far between that they just felt meaningful. You could notice immediate upgrades to your gameplay, and not just through down.
Well, Ultima Online was a bad example because most of the good stuff was crafted, and it was you lost it, right? So if you ran around with a vanquishing shield or a vanquishing sword, I should say, at like in a Buck's Den or something like a PvP area, it was pretty stupid. You were gonna lose it.
Damage. But also
so most people use like kind of crappy gear that had some like decent chances for like a little RNG hit or something like that.
Cosmetics,
if I remember.
You looked different, which made it feel like this was substantial. Those two aspects were huge for me because it was the identity of your character that you were playing and you'd poured hundreds or thousands of hours into, as well as there was of course a social aspect around it. And because I play this genre partly for that meaningful progression and the feeling of achieving something and then feeling the fulfillment and the pride over what I'd achieved, when you remove all of that and replace it with a dice roll, that doesn't feel good. So the idea of long form...
But you got to remember, like, you're the dude who can play games 8 to 12 hours a day and not have it affect his bottom line. Like, that's not the same for everybody. So there has to be a mix. There needs to be reaches where you can reach achievements, but there also needs to be gameplay that's not so time consuming.
More meaningful progression feels like a mechanic that has been steamrolled and streamlined for modern MMOs for the most part. If I was to compare getting a really good item in Burning Crusade on my Elemental Shaman to the retail WoW experience, those two feelings are completely different. They're night and day. What makes it even worse is then if you compare the experience of hitting a pen in Black Desert Online or hitting, a low RNG upgrade in Lost Ark, that feels like opening a loot box in CSGO and getting a rare knife skin. The fulfillment isn't an achievement, it's gambling. It's just sitting there rolling a dice repeatedly until you get lucky. The way in which you also gather materials to do these things are just checklists. You do X and Y each day to get the trickle of resources, and then you sit down at the table and you roll your dice. If you're lucky, collect your percentage upgrade, and if you're not lucky, come back next time with...
I hate dice roll gear in crafting like it is in New World, especially when the comps are heavy grind. Don't you put certain items on the gear to make sure that you get the stats that you want? Isn't it not RNG? I haven't done crafting in New World really yet. I'm gonna start though very soon.
With a higher chance, or swipe your credit card for unlimited chances. When I succeed in upgrade in one of these games with these RNG upgrade systems, I don't feel joy, I feel relief. Which is weird, because what is relief is an emotion. You guys can let me know in the comments, do you see what I'm saying here, or am I just going crazy? And what is relief to you? Do you get that same feeling when you progress in games like this with these RNG upgrades? Because relief for me is a feeling I associate almost entirely with anxiety and things that I'm worried about or not enjoying. Okay. I want it to be over, and when I hit that upgrade, that's exactly what I feel. And I only just noticed this. I only connected 2 and 2 together very recently with Lost Ark, whereas when I compare it to older games where I felt joy is a feeling, of course, that it brings happiness. I used to feel joy when I achieved something in the game, when I got something new with my newly found friends, and we felt that together as a group. I even used to feel joy when I saw somebody else in my group get an item, because I knew that would impact me in the game, because we were playing this game together. We existed in this social space together, and working together as a group was a core feeling of the game. And rarely do I ever feel that those things exist anymore. I don't feel that we're working together as a group. I feel like I'm one person in a game that is full of other individuals. At this point, I don't know if it's me that's changed into a selfish human, but I never care when other people get things because I don't even really see it. They don't get their item drops from the raid. They go away and press their button and maybe they'll succeed their enhancement chance. And this removes a massive factor of what made MMOs the MMO genre for me. I feel like it's totally counterproductive and negative to feel relief in a video game compared to joy. So as soon as I realized that and associated what I was feeling while playing this game, it was pretty much lights out for my experience with Lost Ark. I realized that I love that long form progression, and the genre now is just turned vapid. It's just designed purely to give you incremental progress that will keep you hooked on a constant drip of dopamine. It seems like the genre has moved from designing a game to be played year round, because that's how they'd make their money from the subscription model, to just giving you constant good boy points for doing literally anything, so that maybe in the
and that's why I've consistently said that I wanted to see a subscription model in Star Citizen, because then you could develop the game around valuing your time and not these. I don't know. I mean, we don't even know how Star Citizen's being developed because it's barely a game now, but yeah, that's one of the reasons why I thought that it was a good idea. I don't know if a subscription model is a good idea or not, but it's one of the arguments for it for me.
Short term, you'll give them more money so that you can get more good boy points. I also made a video a couple days ago reacting to a Reddit thread about someone's boyfriend being addicted to spending money in Lost Ark and rage spending €100 to buy things to try and progress in the game. A lot of people didn't seem to agree with me that rage or anger is an indicator for potential addiction issues, specifically when it comes to gambling, but in my experience, anger and in general negative feelings lower your ability to make good decisions.
100%. The worst offenders at the casino are the ones who get pissed off, not the ones who are just, casually spending the money.
So then it's no surprise to me at all that a lot of games that house predatory microtransactions and RNG-based upgrade systems make the process of progression elicit negative emotions that can lead to anger, since then you are much more likely to pay money to try and skip the thing that is making you feel that way. I believe that this is why the systems rely on giving you lots of small, easy, incremental upgrades repeatedly to make you feel how good it is to see that progression constantly, and then they make it consistently harder and harder, so you're much more likely to just say, fuck it, and, just swipe the problem away. It's frustrating, and I feel like this did not used to be the case, and while I can enjoy these games briefly, ultimately, I'm going to notice where these cogs are turning and what they're trying to do to me, and I have to stop. Now, that's probably a long section to talk about something as small as loot and gear progression, but it plays a large factor of why I've enjoyed this genre for over 20 years, and it serves as a small example of how the genre has been designed for the changing times of instant gratification and corporate monetization. To be honest, a lot of people play these games for the power fantasy. They play these games for the escapism, and when the whole escapism and power fantasy is tied to these mechanics that are just designed basically to make you do these things, yeah, it's just not anywhere near as good for me. And it isn't to say that Lost Ark doesn't have difficult, challenging, or fulfilling content either. It really does. Some of the Guardian raids can be challenging the first time you do them. The Abyss dungeons have mechanics that require you to pay attention and learn, or you're going to wipe your group. But the payoff for completing them feels, again, like just much more of the same. Just the incremental march towards the inevitable RNG gate for a couple of % increase in stats. And when I realized all of my playtime was working towards these percentage upgrades, that didn't fulfill me at all, and I was pretty down on the experience. Now, on top of that, social features in the MMO genre are a sore spot. I feel like dungeon queues and instantly getting into groups with strangers are super, super convenient, and they have a place in games that are trying to appeal to the most people possible. I mean, that's why they exist. They respect your time as an individual, and they get you into the content as quickly as feasible. However, in almost all modern MMOs, it feels like most of the people you encounter in game could be replaced by NPCs, and you probably wouldn't even know. In fact, you'd probably have a better time. It feels like with older MMOs, they were designed first and foremost as a social experience, and I don't feel like they are anymore. And back in the day, they used to use things like difficulty to accomplish this. Back then, even the leveling experience was difficult, and that was to incentivize you to group. A lot of games back then was designed with grouping in mind. You didn't get a lot of experience for killing single creatures. you'd get lot 4 quests and you could quest faster with more people, or you'd get more experience for killing harder enemies, so you'd group up and grind areas in things like Lineage and things like EverQuest. This means that you are constantly interacting with people in a social game in what I perceive as a social genre, as opposed to nowadays where they've removed all difficulty and
like, look at mining and Star Citizen, right? Let's keep making it easier for the solo player, and the amount of comments about, like, because mining is the only fleshed out mechanic in the game, right? The amount of comments about I don't want to play with the group, I don't want to do, there's a lot. And yeah, I mean, that's what I liked about MMOs, was the social aspect. That's what I like about streaming, is the social aspect, things like that. It's
with it, most of that social aspect, and instead they give you a streamlined,
a lot of players just play
almost
solo.
single player experience as a default,
Mike's never
not as
an
option, and they make it
like
easy enough that it feels like you could fall asleep and still achieve victory. This is probably why most people quit during the leveling process in most modern MMOs, because it's just boring. It's the same thing. There are no funny stories or social interactions to keep you going, which is what most of the good things about MMOs have always been. And this is, of course, to allow as many people as possible to actually play the game, and then they just stack the difficult content at endgame. And this is what people will say: to have fun in an MMO, it gets good after you played 100 hours, and that's usually after you've finished a leveling experience, which is weird considering that's actually part of the game, or at least it used to be. They essentially just turn it into a really long, boring tutorial in most circumstances, and there are, of course, exceptions to this, and Final Fantasy XIV is one such exception, and you'll find that in many of these cases when you're talking about modern MMO design, that Final Fantasy does stand out above the rest in certain ways. The leveling in Final Fantasy XIV is not a tutorial, it's actually a vehicle to tell you the story, which is the main focus of the game. And I would go back to what I said at the start of the video. I think Final Fantasy XIV encompasses this. It's first and foremost an amazing JRPG with a fantastic story, as that is the focus, and then it just has MMO features added onto it, as opposed to being an MMO first and foremost. I feel like in older MMOs you could play mostly solo as a playstyle choice if you avoided the group content and the harder areas, but you wouldn't experience a lot of the game, and there were still people who did this and loved the game for what it was. I believe they were developed with the understanding that some people would play more and be better, so they would be able to do more stuff and experience more of the game. And new MMOs feel like they've been made so nobody gets left out. Everybody gets the same experience, which means nothing you do really matters truly until you get to the end. And even then, they're probably just going to give you weaker difficulties of things to the point where it trivializes content and doesn't make you really work for anything. Now, I'm not going to say this is the worst game design ever.
In MMOs, you just work and work and work to get to the highest level, and then that's the only time the game really starts, but by then you're already burned out and hate the game and it's just over.
Of making it accessible to everybody, but I do think there is a solid point to be made about how something being difficult and fulfilling over a longer period of time does make the result much more desirable and just feel better overall to achieve. I mean, if we weren't looking for long form progression, we'd probably be playing short form progression games like ARPGs that have seasons or something like that, but instead it feels like the MMO genre has transformed itself to try and appeal to that audience and left behind the longer form progression audience that originally populated these games. As someone who's met a lot of people, some of my best friends, through playing MMOs and bonded with people through playing these games, I miss the game design that puts you in situations where helping people, recognizing them, having logical, meaningful reasons to interact with them would result in experiences that elevated the game to something that is unique to you as an individual. All of my best stories from games.
Once that happens, the world that you're playing in becomes the world you want to live in. And all this monetization and all this stuff takes away from
gaming
that.
The most memorable ones revolve around things that happened with other people first and how that related to the game second. When removing that human element, most of your experiences become carbon copies of everyone else's. You're all on the same treadmill, following the same tight progression path that has been cultivated for you, and as soon as I realize the parameters of that treadmill, I usually lose interest in the game fairly quickly. Now, maybe that is partly because of how people play these games now and how it's different, but again, I've noticed that even playing classic WoW, classic TBC, the game design just makes you interact with more people. It just does. And of course, the feeling of back when you used to be on your own server and you'd see these people day in, day out, and you'd just have a friendly chat with them and you'd eventually get to know them and you'd know their guilds and things like that. It just felt much more connected, which is ultimately what MMOs were originally. There were chat rooms with a bunch of people from all over the world, and you then just had a game around it that you were playing as well. Maybe it's a case of they designed like this because it was the new cool thing that you could meet these people and you could be instantaneously in a world with people from all over the place and have this instant communication with hundreds and thousands of people. But I don't truly believe that that needed to go away. I don't believe that you needed to start designing games around mostly being a solo player with just other people around you. And games like Black Desert Online are a perfect example of this, where most people just don't play the game on their own, which is definitely more accessible because you're not waiting for anybody to do anything. Yeah. But at the same time, it feels much less like an MMO. And again, all these things aren't specifically bad. They're just bad for me. And this, of course, extends into the focus on daily content and the checklists that you have to do if you want to remain sort of caught up to the other people and do the content when it releases, which is definitely not important to everyone, but it is to me. The checklist in these games are getting longer, and the requirements more mundane and tedious in general, and the reasoning seems to be to try and make the option of paying much more appealing. I make good money. I make good money on YouTube, I'm not going to lie about that. And the idea of making alts in Lost Ark and repeating content that I'm not really enjoying, because like I said, it is quite vapid, it just doesn't appeal to me all too much. It's putting a dollar sign on your time, which is never a good feeling to have, because if I can earn money faster by making YouTube videos than I can by playing the game on my alts and then make progress that way, I'm probably just going to spend the money because, again, time is money, friend. It didn't used to be like this, and of course I don't spend money like this because of how it used to be. I feel that if I'm going to spend money on this, then I am contributing to the continuation of this. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy of you just reinforcing them. You're saying, make the game worse, and I'll give you money just so I can have fun with it, which is the position where a lot of people are that don't understand that this is what's going on. Every time you buy one of these things and think, fuck it, it's just $15.
Like, artificially creating the problem, and the only solution to resolve it is by spending more money.
You are contributing to them just making the game worse next patch so that they can sell you something else for $15. And the thing is, if you really enjoy the game, you might think that the juice is worth a squeeze, and maybe it is to you. But I really don't understand why people defend this, and I see it all the time on YouTube. I'll see it on this video as well, that Lost Ark's fine, Black Desert's fine, this game's fine, WoW's fine, and they defend it because they enjoy it. But the thing is, I think it's silly.
They defend it because they're solo players, right? And you hate it because you don't want to be.
To defend this, because I think those people would enjoy the games even more if they weren't designed this way. If they respected your time and didn't try to sell you things and didn't try to frustrate or inconvenience you into spending money,
Star Citizen
you'd have a better time. And I can't really help that this is how I feel. And this is how the genre makes me feel. It could be a doomer take. Maybe it's 100% my problem. Maybe I'm jaded and the genre's fine. And that's entirely understandable, but I truly don't think that's the case, at least not completely, maybe some percentage. I can't rule out that this isn't playing some factor, because I'm not 16 anymore, I'm not raiding Black Temple with the boys that I met on the server and having a real good time. I never will be again. But I have observed and felt how those games used to feel as a now 30-year-old man, and they still feel meaningful, they still feel like they were designed better, they still elicit emotions in me that I thought couldn't be by this genre anymore.
It's essentially because you're a 30-year-old man-child. Again, I'm not saying that he's a man-child, but in a way where you didn't have to grow up and have responsibilities and go to work. You make YouTube videos and you get to play video games 8 to 10 hours a day. That's not the option that a lot of us have, right? And he earned it. He makes great videos. He deserves every dollar he gets on YouTube. I'm not putting him down for that. It's the options to you are the exception rather than the rule for most people who enjoy the MMORPG genre, right?
Don't think this entirely rose-tinted glasses on nostalgia. I played classic TBC when it released, and despite having been there and done that on everything in the game because I loved it so much and I played every waking moment I possibly could, I still found the game to be designed in a way that gave me much more fulfillment and much more of a sense of progression than what these modern games do. And I've had that exact same experience when I went back and played Ultima, when I played EverQuest, when I played any of these older games. They just feel like they respected my time more, they feel like they were designed to be played for longer periods of time, and they didn't feel like they were forcing me to do things I didn't really enjoy just so they could try and make me spend more money. I played those games for so many hours because I was having fun, not because I felt a compulsion to complete dailies. And why I was having fun is because I was playing with other people, whereas a lot of these games now, you're playing by yourself, and I can't help but feel, why would I play an MMORPG that's making me do a checklist of tasks by myself when I could just go play a single player game that doesn't do that and gives me a much better experience. This is why when, again, I will keep saying it, when classic Burning Crusade came out, I was playing the game for 16 hours a day, and every single minute I was playing with other people in Discord. I was having fun, I was talking to people, I was getting to know people. And that's not to say I couldn't force myself to be social in newer MMOs. It's just that because the game's not designed around doing that, there's less stuff to do, less people doing it, and it just doesn't feel the same. Now, this whole video, again, isn't to say that the new games can't be good. I think that some of them really are. I super enjoy Final Fantasy XIV for totally different reasons. I don't enjoy the game as an MMORPG. I enjoy it as a story game that has some social features tacked onto the side. I enjoy games like Black Desert Online for their ability to turn my brain into a television that's been left on standby mode and just forget about the world while I mindlessly press buttons without a single conscious thought. I enjoy the modern MMO experience for different reasons, but the genre is not what it used to be for me, and since this is the one genre that requires the most money and the time to create, I don't have a lot of optimism for it ever being like that again. The money follows the casual audience, so they can reach the biggest market possible. Understandably so, with the risks associated with making a game on the scale that these games require. But that means they're going to follow these same design philosophies, and that means pay to win is a given at the expense of the core enjoyment of the game. That means as many systems as possible that are designed to drip feed you incremental progression to keep you interested until they've got their hooks in you, and waste as much of your time as possible until you're playing for the compulsion of it versus the enjoyment of it. Now, I might be totally alone in a lot of what I've said here, but I feel that I truly do think the genre has changed into something I don't really recognize. It isn't the place I envisioned we would be all those years ago, when my guild in whatever game I was playing would talk about how cool it would be in the future, when we had new games released with new technology and new ideas and innovation. Maybe that's a failure on my expectations and not the genre. Maybe I failed to recognize that this was the natural progression and that this is where everyone else wanted to be. I recognize I don't have the answers here, and it's possible that whatever game would be designed ideally for me wouldn't be popular in 2022, but it makes perfect sense to me to look at a game like World of Warcraft and see that over time, as the game lost what made it feel fulfilling and socially enjoyable, it also lost the majority of its player base, trading meaningful progression for good boy points simulator and doing the same content on multiple difficulties, making you have zero identity within the world you're playing due to the cross-realm features, and making paying for a boost for content completion a constant in-your-face reminder that nothing you do matters anymore has, in my opinion, made the game drastically less enjoyable, and the playing numbers accurately reflect that. I use World of Warcraft as an example quite a lot, pretty much all the time actually, because I played and loved that game for over half my life, and it is the perfect example of seeing that shift in game design from what it was then to what it is now. The novelty didn't wear off and make the majority of those people quit the most popular MMO ever made. No, they designed it into being a short-form dose of entertainment, a McDonald's burger of fulfillment in a mall food court surrounded by other fast food that you could easily have instead, giving you almost a one-to-one interchangeable experience. The only reason to hold on is the thought that maybe one day it can return to the state it once was in when most people were playing and the game was good. That's how I feel, and it isn't like all the games are bad, because again, I don't think they are. They're just not good MMORPGs, at least in how it was originally. Maybe they're good MMOs by today's standards of what the word means to people, and maybe I'm just old. There are, of course, glimpses of it here and there, and for people who are new to the genre who didn't experience the things I've touched upon in this video, they're probably still great, but for a lot of us, they just remind us of what we consider to have been better. I don't begrudge anybody having an enjoyable experience. That's what gaming's for, and I'm not bitter about it. I can talk about it until I'm blue in the face, and I do still enjoy these games. It's not like I'm quitting MMOs, you know, don't get crazy about it. I'm still going to play all the new ones. I'm still going to go back and play WoW with their new expansion.
He didn't breathe through the entire video. Impressive. It's just how he edited it. You edit out the breaths. It's just what you do now.
I'm doing that to myself, and I hope everyone truly enjoys the games they play, and if you do, my opinion shouldn't matter to you. I just, you know, use it as food for thought, and maybe you'll notice some of these things as well. I hope not, because that might...
If he didn't edit out the breaths, this video would be fucking 2 hours long.
Ruin it for you, but there you go. You enjoy what you enjoy, that's what matters. I do look at the genre right now, what we have versus what we started with, and wonder if you couldn't have been having even more fun if we were closer to that in design. Then again, maybe this is exactly what people want nowadays, and that's just a me problem. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe out there. We're out. Peace.
I don't think it's just a you problem, but I think it's there's not as many of us left that like it that way, that want the game to be geared towards social more than anything. Leveling's enjoyable, meaningful. There's no way for anybody to skip because there wasn't back then. Like, I mean, Star Citizen's the one that drives me insane. Somebody suggested this in the YouTube comments for me, and I posted it or made a tweet about it, and then it went on Reddit, and then Chris Roberts like grabbed it and said, we're going to do this, but then never did it, of course, is a different paint even for a ship that you buy in game versus a ship that you bought on the website, to show that I actually earned this thing and you bought it with a credit card, to show the difference between the two of us, because that's the thing that, to me, it was like, okay, at least show me the fact that I achieved something. At least give me something for my achievements. When you give me the exact same thing that some clown bought with a credit card, you know, it's not cool. But anyway, Kira, thank you. That was fun. That was enlightening. And it bums me out because, yeah, I played Ultima 2 and for way too long, and it'll never be like that again, and it's sad.